So I have the great privilege of being here today with Tony Selimi. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Peter.
Now, normally I start these interviews by saying, talking about birth, but I'm going to talk about the end of your life. So we'll work backwards from the end. You've hardly got the end compared with me. You're in the middle of But we'll assume that we'll bypass birth for the moment and go to what you do now. And it's a wonderful story of how you help people. What are your sort of main things that you try to do that clients and people could be, very interested in?
There are three things that I do with my clients. The first part is the business side of things. So I work with a lot of leaders, business owners, CEOs, and professional people who potentially may be going from transition to setting up their own business and creating the entire foundation of the business and getting the clarity, so they have a clarity of vision, clarity of mission, clarity of purpose, but also aligning the psychology to the results they want to create. Because psychology is the key of creating anything in your life. So that's one part of the people who come to me specifically professionally, whether it's wealth building, whether it's business building, products, ideas, so innovation. And potentially with some of my clients, I'm actually inspiring their teams as we go through this process of what they need to do in navigating this uncertainty that creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of, I would say, mental impact on the employees. So that is just the business side of things. But then I work with a lot of individuals who basically, they have their own dreams, but potentially they might have their own roadblocks, potentially might not have the clarity where they need to go, or they might have relationship issues at home, or conflicts, or anger issues, or depressions. And I've helped a lot of people with addictions and mental health problems. So this is the part where basically the focus is on the client, meaning the work is integrated in a way that it's client focused. Hence why I first have a session, which I call a breakthrough 2-hour session, to see why is it the client would love to invest in something like this. Because people who come to me, usually they've done a lot of personal development work, they've done a lot of reading their books, and they just need to break through those next walls to get them to where they want to be. And then this a small part of the people, because of my, a lot of people call me hands of light person, and the healing work that I've done over 30 years, I do get a small percentage of clients to have them with the range of health issues, so they can actually psychologically, they can go through that, but also set up the psychology needed for the body to come back to perfect healing.
I think a lot of people call me hands of death, so we could perhaps compromise. setting aside. That's a joke, by the way. I'm glad you got it. Some people. So actually, that's perfect. So helping businesses, helping individuals, and dealing with sort of the blocks. Sometimes it is the health blocks and the relationship issues that stop people achieving their dreams. Absolutely true. So, and you write a few books as well, don't you?
Yes, I mean, my life changed, Peter, when I was made redundant in 2009, 2008, when the last financial crisis that hit the world impacted so many people. But also I had, back then I used to do coaching outside of my technology world. And it was more of a hobby, more of a thing, mentoring people and coaching people who actually needed my help. And I lost a couple of friends who worked for Lehman Brothers and from other banks who basically committed suicide. And that was for me a wake-up call that I'm heading that road myself. And as a gay man who doesn't have children, my first family, it's my sisters, my brother, their children, my parents. And because I come from a civil war zone, during those times, my family, I had a lot of people that I lost during the war, but the people who remained, I wanted to support them. So all of my resources that I was earning back then would be will be spent either to help my family or help myself to go to the next level. So in 2009, when I was told I'm the last one to go from the company I used to work back then, I found myself totally lost. I found myself back on the streets, and I found myself, after working 19 years to get off the streets, I don't think this time I could make it. So to the point that I even attempted to commit suicide back then, because I had so much pressure about helping people and how I'm going to pay and how I'm going to support the people I love. And everywhere in the newspapers, everywhere, like doomsdays, everything was saying that, Tony, you're not going to get a job. You're not going to get back to where you were. And I went to the job center, and what I saw, it's queues of people queuing for things. And, you know, I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke about their worries, about their anxieties. I spoke about their lives. And here I am reflecting, highly educated guy who spent 10 years going from living homeless to climbing the corporate ladder and creating the success and graduating from one of the top universities, is at a job center queuing for 65 pounds. That really shocked me because, you know, I lived for 19 years being told by media, by a lot of people around me, that refugees come to this country to milk the system. And here I'm thinking in the, you know, looking at every adversity I went through, looking at the millions of lives that were lost in civil war in Yugoslavia, and I'm asking myself, is this what it means to be a refugee? Is this what it means to be a teenager who just gone through war and almost lost my life many times and lost the people's one, that through all that struggle, whether it's me from Yugoslavia, the people from Syria, or other parts of the world who escaped somehow, or maybe people helped them, like I was helped to come in a safe haven, to be for 65 pounds. So my entire psychology around refugees and migrants changed in that moment.
And it was 65 pounds. I have been to the job centre once myself in 2008 or around that time.
Yes.
And I decided never to go again. The people were not like people like yourself who were able to help people. They just say, go and look at the computer. I mean, it was just, if anyone really wanted a job, and I was just thinking, well, there isn't much going on now. I thought I'd better go down and see if I can get this 60. I thought it was 64, but 65 pounds.
That's it, yes.
Anyone actually seriously trying to get a job were completely disempowered, which is why people need people such as yourself. But I want to take you back now, because you've set out a fantastic agenda. But like the BBC programme Hard Talk, you know, we need to probe the basis of your competence, really, because I know there's a lot there from the little bit I found out about you. And you've given a couple of clues. You started life in Macedonia, but by descent being Albanian, and you were involved in a civil war. I mean, tell me a little bit about what that was like in terms of what it was like, and indeed what you learned from it.
There are no words that can do justice when somebody goes through any form of atrocities or any form of pain. Whether it's been physical pain or, in my case, my entire identity, not just mine, but the entire Yugoslavia, people's identity were crushed, because Yugoslavia was set up by 6 republics and 2 autonomous countries and made Yugoslavia. So you are born in a country where you are told from a very young age, this is your identity. And then all of that pride, I mean, President Tito was renowned around the world before the Yugoslavia breakout. You know, at his funeral, we had millions of people, including the head of states, including the British royals. So it was one of the last funerals at that level that everybody from around the world attended his funeral. So it's a very respectable person. But as a result, we as children grew up in a communist country with a specific ideology about who we are, what we are there to do, and the kind of identity you create around that. So that was the part that later on happened when the civil war started. Before that, you know, being born in Macedonia and being of ethnic origins, and also coming from parents who come from different religious background, who actually, you know, they transcended their religion, they just got together in love. And in communist Yugoslavia, religion wasn't really promoted. It was something you have at home. So you had people cross-marrying from different cultures, from different religions. People were just making love and having families. They weren't really thinking in terms of dividing themselves from creed or religion. So being in Macedonia during this transition time, I can never forget when President Tito died, because there was no single person who did not cry. children cried, every adult cried, every person in the entire country was going through that grief. But as part of that, it also gave rise to the nationalism that happened in former Yugoslavia that led to breakup of Yugoslavia, because we did not have a stable leadership back then. And the processes they put in place, and when I started as a child, I was 9 years old, seeing how people would argue in parliament, and how suddenly we're seeing people, you know, being aggressive in parliament. That was a whole new reality we were learning. And deep down, as a 9 years old, I knew it's going to lead to civil war, which it did in 1988 and 89 when the whole thing broke out. But as part of me growing up in that culture, I had to deal with different bullies around me, partly because of no fault of my own, being born as a mixed product. Secondly, going into a school that was, I went one of the top math schools in former Yugoslavia in Macedonia, Rade Jović Korčagin, and I was the only Albanian studying in one of the top math schools. And despite the fact that I was one of the top students, and I won many awards as a kid from that school, I was consistently bullied by professors who came from an ethnic origin, Serbian ethnic origin and Macedonian ethnic origin. And being the only Albanian in there, I used that bullying, daily bullying, to really force myself to study and show that I am worthy. And that was just one part of it. Then I went to university in Zagreb, and I was so free and so happy, because Zagreb in Croatia, it's very different culture from Macedonia. It's almost like an upgraded culture. And suddenly I became free. Here I am with nobody judging me about it. So I finished the first year at university, one of the top engineering universities in former Yugoslavia. And then the war started. I was conscripted by the Yugoslav army straight into the war. So, you know, suddenly I lost contact with all of my family, and not just me, but everybody during this period of time when the army took you from the school straight in the army and straight trained to be a killer. And you are only 18, going for 19 when this is happening. So frankly, it happens so fast. And before we know it, my last conversation with my dad, who also in former Yugoslavia, before he started his restaurant businesses, he was an officer in the army. So, you know, for me, when I saw what was happening in the army, when I told my parents, you know, I need to get out of here, it was almost dishonoring the family. And that was not just me, it was for every child, because you are trained. If you are not for the army, you're not for home, you're not for marriage, you're nobody. So after you go through the training of the army, when you come back, majority of the young men back then would get married, have children, and, you know, if you were to ask for a girl to marry, the first question would be, has he been in the army? So it was a whole different setup that psychologically you are left alone. And then we have the civil war that nobody knew who's shooting and who's killing. And then you have to go through that. And on many occasions, I don't even, I can't, the only thing I think is some God out there, some angel has been supporting me through this journey. And one of the generals who helped me to get out of the situation where more than half of my unit got murdered and brutally killed. And then I ended up, my mom, borrowing money from our neighbors, because my dad was back then in Bosnia and they were all locked down. And with the last flight that left Macedonia, I found myself on the streets of London, homeless, did not speak English, mentally, emotionally destroyed, and I cried for almost like 6 months. I think there was not a single day or single hour I did not cry.
I mean, from your story, relating it to how people either pick themselves up or stay. I used to say 25 years ago when I started my business that people say, how did you do it? I said, well, I put myself in a ditch. I didn't have that experience that you've had, which I'm really pleased about, actually. But nonetheless, I didn't have to go through that. But I put myself out of work. And I now tell people that some people, when they get in a ditch, they stay in it, and some people crawl out. And you obviously are of the type of person, which is why it's so important for you to be someone who inspires others to do that, to help people when they're stuck, to get out of the ditch. I think is really a takeaway for that. But I can't compare your experience to my sort of startup, but we're not here to talk about that. I do, however, want to talk to you about jump forward to 2009 again, because the thing that you sort of put in about suicide, I happen to know that that's a real outcome for people, because I wrote a song, a satirical song about someone jumping off a cliff because their life was hopeless. I called it Fiscal Cliff. It was a song about finance. So it really resonated with me, but I don't wish to dismiss the seriousness of this. So you started your business around that time. I mean, are there any lessons for people trying to do the same right now that you would transfer to them?
Yes, I mean, thank you for that. It's there's an issue with suicide, and I believe almost 1 billion people have that problem about sometimes in your life when adversity and when the life totally changes around you and creates this uncertainty. Suicidal thoughts comes to every human being at different level and at different times in their life. So when I look back in 2009, when I left the job that I truly loved, and I spent 9 years building a team, building the success that I created, it was almost like a death. It was almost like somebody just gave you a knife in your heart and you find yourself helpless. And, fortunately for me, I did not have children to come home to face the little things that run around like angels, and you need to support them. But there are many people in the world that, they have to face something which is almost impossible for most men to face out there. Women are built somehow more emotionally strong, but for us as men, nobody teaches us how to handle emotions. Over the last 30 years, I worked on emotional intelligence and understanding emotional intelligence. And with every male client I've had, majority of their dictionary, it's limited to be able to express the emotion.
And I want to interject there because I want to resonate again, because as a generality, it's not true for all men and women, but men, and particularly your story of having to be strong and fight in the army, we're all driven to, boys don't cry, as they say, and we're not allowed to do this. This is absolute bullshit. And we're taught to, use more testosterone to fight and what have you. And cultures particularly reinforce that. I was thinking back to your experience of having to do this and having to do that. And if you weren't doing that, there was something wrong with you and all the rest of it. Sadly, we're at this time trying to copy the design in this country. I wish people would learn from your experience at the sort of corporate business level as well, because this is we need the qualities of kindness, collaboration, gentleness, and that emotional intelligence. And men can have it, can't they?
Absolutely, they can, Peter. I believe, personally, I've transcended those separations between men and women. And now I see people as individuals, as souls. And we all have the capabilities. Of course, we don't have the capabilities to give birth to a child. But when it comes to mental capabilities, those are all things that every human being can develop. It is what really inspires me. It is really what wakes me up every morning. Still to date, I only sleep about 4 hours, a habit I developed being on the streets of London. So it's on a corporate level, on a business level. I cannot stress enough how important it is to bring mentors and coaches and people with certain experiences to inspire people. Because sometimes, Peter, I have been through so much that that's why I keep writing books. One word somebody can tell you, it's almost like somebody's giving you that hand when you are in that ditch and gives you hope for you to be able to climb it. One single word. When people tell me, what it takes to change your life, my response is one word. Because one word can be that hand to somebody that can just make that first step. Because as human beings, that spirit inside of us, using this powerful body, can do miracles. And we've seen that across the board. We've seen that with shows like X Factor. Look what Simon Cowell is doing with the world. I just get inspired that he goes around the world, created most inspiring show, and brings talents from every walk of life that nobody would ever heard otherwise. And there are so many cases like that. That's what inspires me, because I believe that in every human being, there is the intelligence that once awakened, we can be a force for good for humanity, for ourselves, for our family, for our countries, for our businesses, for our leaders, for everybody around us. And we have transcended those stages of just look at ourselves. If our neighbor is not good, we're not going to be good. If our community is not good, we're not going to be good. If our social environment is not going to be good, we're not going to be good. If our town is not good, we're not going to be good. If our country is not good, we're not going to be good. And if the world is not good, we're not going to be good. So I think it's time for us to awaken that consciousness within ourselves that we are interdependent species. This is what led in me writing #loneliness, the virus of modern age, because as I traveled globally to work with all sort of range of clients, I saw this loneliness between people, and we are connected in our hearts. If you sit down at human level and listen to people, every person has a story, and behind that story, either there's a triumph or there's a deep pain that the person has not yet learned how to overcome. So we are, I would say, creatures that God created us with the ability to learn. And this is what inspires me every day, what I do with every person who comes around me, to awaken that wisdom, that learning in themselves so they can find their own path.
So another resonance there. There's a book by two Swedish professors, Kjell Nordstrom and another one that's almost unpronounceable for me. But they talk about bowling alone, that people go bowling alone, you know, and they talk about loneliness and how we're connected. Lots and lots of relevant resonances there. Now, I want to turn to something else on your professional life now. I'm sort of allegedly noted for being a creativity consultant. And I get lots of entrepreneurs saying, well, we need more ideas to start our business. And sometimes I find that they need less ideas, actually. They need to execute ideas. I've met thousands of people who have a wonderful idea. And when you unpeel that for a few hours, and then you find out that nobody actually wants it, or they haven't developed it, and it is just an idea. And ideas are plentiful, but execution is more difficult. So, yeah, have you got any examples of where you've sort of help people to sort of focus? Because I think focus really matters as well as creativity. It's not an either or thing there.
Absolutely. I mean, again, going back to the beauty of who we are, we can basically have millions of ideas, but people can get lost into that. So as you said, deciphering what people want is a process on its own for any consultant, any coach. So for me, the first part that I do with people is really clarify their values. And most people think this is the values that they have. But one thing that I've learned many different processes about values, and one of them that I use is my own process, but also Dr. John DeMartini, who's one of the leading experts in the world around human behavior, from which I've been learning for the last 10 years. And he's one of the top scientists as well. So there's a process in the brain that basically, when I compared in the Unfakeable Code, the latest book I just finished, when I'm comparing the artificial intelligence and how we're designing that, and then I'm comparing the last 30 years of development of technology, there's a process in the brain that both I have created and also John has created, which really works. And I've seen both processes work in parallel and creates the same results in people. Because sometimes people say to me, I want this, but the reality does not show that. And the reality around us, it's the perfect mirror, whether we are speaking our truth or whether we are lying to us. And one thing that I notice people, when it comes to working with businesses, entrepreneurs, leaders, CEOs, it's like a lot of us, sometimes we see other people and we want what other people want, which not necessarily means it is what you are capable of creating and doing. And it's not in alignment with the reality. You know, for instance, it's like if I say to you, I'm the best architect out there, you would laugh at me because there's no building on my name. There's no building around the world that says Tony Selimi created this building. So I might be living a fantasy. But if I tell you about all the things that I do and you go and check and say, okay, this guy is a real thing. And the brain has a way to make us believe into things. This is the Unfakeable Code. I talk about self-deception. And we are so good at it. And I'll talk about removing those marks. So, but going back to that, the first exercise I do in my Vital Planning for Elevated Living, which is the 5-day program I teach globally, it's taking people thorough to really understand the importance of values. And if the values are not matching the vision we've created, we need to reshuffle those values and change the priority in the brain, in the psychology of the person. And that's not just something you do once. It's something that consistently you do, because as a human being, you consistently evolve. And when you start with an idea that you follow that idea, your values will change as you realize certain goals. And it becomes bigger. You know, for me, when I started this work on myself, was about me healing my wounds. It was never about me going around the world and writing books, because I was very happy building a CEO career of a technology guy because I love technology. So I wanted to be the best I can be in the corporate world and help other people, manage people. And I've achieved that. So, but if I look back, what was driving me then, it wasn't about writing books. It was about really finding ways to heal all those different wounds and all those different personas that I've built as a result of every wound. And unfortunately, it takes a very trained professional to take you through this process because our self-deceptive nature is so amazing. It's like this sophisticated system inside of us that stops us from really being great. And this is what I dedicated my life. So going back to that, it's very important to get the person, clarify their values. And if they say to you, my value is wealth, but their bank account shows no wealth, that's a lie. That's a total lie. So we have to take them back and see what is it really behind that they actually put a value on.
This is so important. I mean, I do some organizational consulting, and sometimes we try and just change instrumental behaviors with a view to getting a goal done. But if the beliefs and values that sit behind those behaviors are not consistent in senior people, they can jump through the new hoops like a mouse can go round a wheel and do the new behaviors, but somehow they won't be consistent, or they won't be 100% good. And in any case, their beliefs and values will come in to kick them back in the side at some point. So you're spending the time working on the value base and the belief systems, and then the behavior naturally follows forward, I imagine, rather than just trying to play tricks with people's behavior and hoping that their beliefs will change, which is a different way of approaching the subject. But I really like the fact that you try and get people centered before you get them to do the new tricks, because the new tricks essentially are probably easy if you're centered.
Yes, I mean, it's basically what I've found, Peter. It's every time there's a change in state, in the inner being, the way they approach things changes. Meaning, if you start a product where your psychology is disintegrated, as your psychology starts being integrated and somebody helps you, like yourself or myself or other trained professionals out there, from that space, you'll create a whole different originality of who you are. And also in the organizations, this process, I believe organizations who are most successful, they found a way to integrate this in the psychology of the business. And sometimes I see a lot of people saying, okay, we've got in-house trained professionals. Now, in-house trained professionals can only see what they see. This is why I always say to people, if you can, get somebody from outside who knows nothing about your business, but has clear expertise and experience that they can go like a zoom, because that's what I do. I literally almost like zoom in into what the organization is doing well to start with, and then what is it that they want to improve, and then look at the space in between that stops them from getting there. And that space in between could be processes, could be methodology, could be people, could be behavioral issues, could be conflicts, could be communication issues, because communication in any organization is key. And in today's world, a lot of organizations have lost the ability to communicate in a way that the employees hear.
Yeah, I mean, it is in that combination of expertise in different fields and provocation and expertise in different fields of being able to see the whole system. I think too many times in business, people are locked into a silo, or in fact, their expertise has trained them. There's nothing they can do outside of their world, actually. They do say that in innovation terms, one needs 10,000 hours or so, or 10 years of experience makes you an expert. But then often you can't see outside of your prison of expertise. It's really difficult. So that's really, really matters. Now, I'm just thinking, what's on your list for the future to do?
There is a lot of things, Peter. It's partly because of my call to really bring this work to transform, change, and inspire the lives of 1 billion people, which in this 1 billion people is the process of being able to infiltrate the methods that I have created, including behavioral changes, which I just trademark. It's in education, in healthcare, in business, in leadership, and in politics. Because those 5 things are all woven together in the fabric in which people experience the quality of the society. And I think until we change that collectively, and until we raise the vibration and the education level of the masses, we will have new political leaders, we will have new political system, we'll have new financial system, we'll have new way of working together, collaborating together, and actually judge our leadership by the quality of life people live. I mean, imagine a vision where basically every, I would say, let's say our government is judged by the quality of life that we lead on a daily basis. You know, that will create a whole new movement around UK, but also shift around the world, because we are a major power that can influence the world for better and for good. And to be able to leave something, I would say, you know, to leave a planet for the future children that they can enjoy and breathe and have the freedom we've experienced in our life. You know, it's a duty for every soul, each one of us, no matter what our political backgrounds, creeds, religion, race, or anything like that. It's inherent within us to be able to leave something better for the future generation. And that depends on all of us to work in collaboration.
And many of the world's economists are now saying that the quality of a country's output should be judged by well-being and health and other things, and not GDP. So you're completely consistent. I wish that we could change some of the key leaders in our country, and I think you have the tools and methods to do it. And I would add the gravity of having come, you know, not stayed in a war zone and not stayed in the ditch, have decided to do something different about it, and against a lot of odds actually there, because you mentioned being gay, and how I know from personal experience a lot of my gay friends know exactly what you're talking about. In terms of being, and we do need that diversity of thinking, not compartmentalization of who we are, whether a man, woman, this, that, the other. This is bullshit. We need humanity in the human race. So this is fantastic. How do we get in touch with you, Tony?
Before I share how we get in touch, I wanted just to add in, because you asked me a question where I'm heading with this.
Yeah.
So basically, I've already started writing the next book called The Unfakeable Genius, which is about truly awakening spiritual intelligence within the individuals to become grounded leaders around the world. So being able to bring that into leadership and into business. So I'm writing a whole range of books that basically brings the person to a whole new level of awareness and consciousness. But also, as we haven't spoken about, it's about the documentary series, which is the one that we launched for my 50th birthday in December, called Living My Illusion. And the first episode is The Truth Hurts. And I would say, while the truth hurts, the lies do burn. And eventually, for anybody out there, whether we are in our own lives, with our own families, whether in business, in leadership, in government, every time we tell a lie, eventually somebody will have to uncover that, and you will face the consequences of that. But unfortunately, when you're in position of leadership, a lot of people will face those consequences. So basically, I'm writing a series of books to really bring this word to these 1 billion people, but also now more and more of my private clients. One of the offerings that I do with my clients is, as they do the first year of working with me, I do documentaries and films to support their businesses. Because we're going into a generation where more and more video will be used for sort of, I would say, marketing, but also for educational purposes. And like we've seen now, how most of the schools have gone virtual. So, you know, we as people, we are thirsty for education, for knowledge, and every human being can teach you something. So, and as part of this journey, I realized that basically when my last clients that we did the first documentary, Living My Illusion, they are business owners, a wonderful British family with a technology company. And as I went to coach the business, I ended up coaching them as a couple. And they got so inspired by this work that they put the camera back at them to transparently show their journey, that although they are successful people, they are as vulnerable as somebody who's in the ditch.
Yeah.
And we're tackling issues such as, in the first documentary, we're tackling issues such as midlife crisis, and the differences between how women go through the midlife crisis and how men go through midlife crisis, and all the health effect, mental effect, depression, loneliness. So we're really talking about we squeezed 3 years of coaching into one documentary. And this is now, I want to promote that more and more with all of my clients who are coming forward once they've seen this documentary now, and it won many global awards around the world, to basically capture their story, their transformational story, as a real life story, not something that we see as a fiction. People want to be related to them, to see how they go from where they are to somewhere where they want to go in a safe manner, but also showing that you have to go through adversity. There's no success without pain. And we sort of thinking that we can have anything we want in our life without having some form of pain.
Absolutely.
Pain is part of that. So basically documentaries and films are developing more, but with every book, the books are written in a way that every chapter becomes a documentary. Every chapter becomes a story. Every chapter becomes a training program. And also bring this globally to as many people as possible. So I'm really focused in that vision to really bring this work and create more work for people to improve their lives. And so the business are better, leaders are better. You know, we're having we can see now how much the NHS suffered as a result of not having somebody supporting the doctors and nurses to this on a psychological mental health level. Okay. So, you know, it's sort of, I'm hoping to bring it to this to as many people around the world, but also to partner up with a lot of other people out there who are called to leave a better world behind.
And absolutely, we need more people. I was going to say men. Men are a particular target. We need more men to be as open about success and failure. I often say to people, without darkness, there can be no light. And one of my great sort of favourites as an emotionally intelligent leader is Sir Richard Branson, who gave me an interview. And he is honest about the number of failures he's made, and, you know, alongside tremendous success. You know, we need more people who are going to be open and transparent and admit mistakes as well. So how do we find you?
People can go to my website, which is tonyselimi.com, TonySelimi.com, and you have links to all of my social media. And also they can, from there, they can email my team and my PA, who always responds to people's queries.
And this video will, of course, find its way onto YouTube, and I think we'll do a LinkedIn article to it as well, and some other things. So we are socially distant here, so I'd like to shake your hand. But thank you so much, Tony, for an absolutely fantastic tour of your life, and more importantly, how you like to give back to people who are struggling with being an entrepreneur, being a business leader, struggling with health, and finding life either lonely or troubling if they're working like in health context or in the current age, and having to give 20 hours a day of their life to people. This is tremendously stressful, and we desperately need people like yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and everything you're doing as well, because as a change maker, all of us in our own ways, we're looking to help as many people as we can, because that's for me what business is all about. Changing the lives of as many people as you want.